Hey everybody, it's Eden Maybon from lightcycleastrology.com, and today is September the 5th, 2022, and we're taking a look at the transits in this video that are kicking off the week. So, happy Labor Day. Let me go ahead and pull up the chart for the current moment here. Now, one thing that just happened, you can see, is that Venus has now ingressed into the sign of Virgo. So we have Venus in Virgo kicking off today. Now, whenever you get a planet that moves into a new sign, there is always going to be a dignity change. Dignity relates to this concept in ancient astrology where certain planets were said to have a home status or an exaltation status. There were different types of statuses that planets could hold in different signs. And this was all representative just of how the energy expresses itself. So when Venus is in the sign of Virgo, that is a huge dignity change for the goddess. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Something else that is also sort of tying in with that, though, however, is that Venus is now, within the 15-degree range of the sun. And whenever we get a planet that is that close to the sun, it is said to be under the beams of the sun. And this is also something that you can delineate from. So we'll talk about that kind of all together with the Venus stuff here in a moment. But what else is happening? We spent the weekend kind of vibing with this Mercury opposed Jupiter. You can see that Mercury is now slightly past at 8 degrees here, slightly past the opposition, the exact alignment point to Jupiter, who is at 6 degrees. So this is in the flowing fourth stage, as they called it, which means that when planets, when they start to testify to each other, when they start to make an alignment to each other, a conjunction or a sextile, square, opposition, what have you, trine, when planets are moving into these angles together, they have about a 3-degree range of influence where once they move within that 3 degrees, either before the exact alignment or 3 degrees after the exact alignment, they have sort of different kind of things that are happening. But when it moves into the 3-degree range of influence, that's when you might expect to maybe feel something or notice something around you that is going to represent that symbol. As it hits the exact alignment moments, sometimes that is when events can sort of manifest the symbolism out here in the world. And when it's past that exact alignment, the ancients had this phrase called flowing forth. And it was sort of like a fruit that's ripe on the tree and it's ready to maybe fall at any moment. So it's kind of, it just has this connotation of like, it's ready, it's ripe. Depending on what is happening, depending on how your life is unfolding and the karma that you have in your birth chart, this could all, relate to the timing of aspects that are transiting through. But in any sense, we are now in the flowing fourth stage for this aspect. And I really noticed this aspect over the weekend myself personally. One thing that is really interesting is that we have Mercury, who is a god of language and details and communications and just data. We also have Jupiter, a planet that is representing some type of faith. So it was very interesting. We had this oppositional energy, and I spent the weekend creating a new system, which Jupiter represents systems of organization or things that come together in some kind of order. Reading and doing a lot of research for the system that I was trying to create. So I was researching an Oracle animal card deck, and I really went into it pretty deeply. And so it kind of pulled in both of these energies, like the system of divination and order and the construct as a whole, especially something that is related to something wisdom-based, like Jupiter-based. But it took all of the technical skilled reading data to kind of put that system into my flashcard set. So that is sort of how the energy expressed on my level, which is kind of a silly example, but it is just an example to kind of give you some idea of sometimes how these energies can manifest in the symbolism. So we are still going to experience this opposition for the next couple of weeks. It's a big transit throughout the month, and it's really the base transit, I think, like the foundational transit of the entire month. Now, I did a whole video on this aspect, the last video that I did. So if you want to know more about that, you can check that out on my channel. But essentially, we're still feeling that. Now, also what is coming through at the same time is we're still in that building or individuating moments of the first quarter phase. So first quarter moons are always representing some type of breaking away potentially from an environment or a situation that is something we remember from our childhood or our family. There's some kind of a breaking away moment or something that we're doing. We need to individuate ourselves out there in the world and in the environment. And I like to think of the first quarter moons as sort of like Aries moons. Even though the moon isn't in Aries, it's kind of an Aries energy type of moon, because it's just kind of going to go out there and it's going to be victorious and it's going to conquer. It's going to stand up. It's going to fight to become an expression that is building. And that is what the moon is doing during the first quarter, is it's sort of trying to build up its light on its way to the full moon. So you can see that the first quarter moon often has to do with things that we're building in our lives. And because the first quarter moon is now in the sign of Capricorn for just the next day and a half or so, this is going to have a little bit of a wily energy for lunar things, because the moon's dignity in Capricorn is said to be in exile or in detriment, whichever word you want to use. But the basic concept was that the moon's home or domicile or natural temple is in the sign of Cancer, and lunar things like to collect things. They want to have family around them. They want to sort of be this nurturing energy, and Capricorn is sort of the opposite archetype of that energy. Capricorn sometimes wants to be in control and out in the world and sort of strict and maybe rejecting things or even rejecting family things. So when you have the moon in Capricorn, there can be this little bit of this outsider kind of energy. So if you pair these two things, the first quarter moon energy, that kind of Aries, I'm going to go out and conquer and, bring my situation into the world, either through just sheer determination or willpower, or sometimes even fighting if I have to. And now we have the moon in a sign that also combines that energy with sort of, I might be an outsider, or I might be an outcast in the family. I might not be home. I might be out there in the world trying to do stuff. So you can kind of get a feel for that energy when it's combined like that. So we're going through that at the moment, and those are really the major ones. So let's go back and talk about this Venus moving into the sign of Virgo. Venus is said to be in her fall in the sign of Virgo, but why? Why was Venus said to be fallen in the sign of Virgo? And where Robert Smith sort of translated this concept into the term depression. So why is Venus depressed or fallen in the sign of Virgo? That is really the big question. A really good source for this is Rhetorius the Egyptian. And this is the astrological compendium. And in this, actually really early on, he sort of goes over exaltations and depressions of planets. He's actually referring to an earlier astrologer that went by the name of Antiochus, but he's writing about what Antiochus previously discussed. And he says, quote, "There," meaning Virgo, "there is desire and the enjoyment of sex in its fall. The rationale for this is because Virgo is in the sign where Mercury is both at home and exalted. Rhetorius says that Mercury exalted here in Virgo, we say that Mercury is the Lord of words." So this is really interesting. We are seeing the goddess who represents desire and sex moving into a temple that is ruled by a god of words and rationality and being in your head. And we've probably all had this experience personally or seen something like this on TV and movies or what have you, where two people are in the bedroom and one of them won't shut up because they're nervous and they're in their head and they're just rambling, and it's making it awkward and it's killing the vibe. So this isn't to say that you can't have some dirty talk and it can come out enjoyable, but usually that in your head rational space doesn't lend itself to being in that really in the moment lustful kind of thing. So what we're essentially saying is that Venus as a goddess that is in her body, she's dancing, she's enjoying life, she's voluptuous, she's lusty. She doesn't necessarily you know want to be in a temple like a library, unless she's in some sexy librarian thing, which is sexy. So it's not to say that it can't be sexy, but typically, she's not in there reading to do homework, right? That is going against her natural nature to sort of be in this temple in Virgo. One of the YouTube channels that I would watch for fun was called The Fearless Man. I'll see if I can link this in the description, one of these videos, but he made these videos where what he's doing is he's trying to help men be more naturally attractive when they're out there in the world and they see a woman they like and they don't know how to go up and approach them, and they get all nervous and they get rejected. And for a man, this is, it's usually the job of the man to approach the woman. But if the man doesn't know how to do it and it's something that he's terrible at, he's going to have a hard time meeting partners. So the Fearless Man channel is really about helping men just kind of be comfortable in their masculinity enough to be attractive to women, because women find certain things attractive and other things not attractive. He would have these workshops and he would film them where he would be on a stage and there would be a whole, group of men in the workshop. And he would hire these tall, beautiful young models to come out and stand on stage. And then he would just ask certain people to volunteer from the workshop to come on the stage. And he would say, okay, pretend, you're seeing her in a bar or something. How do you approach? And he would actually have to do it not only in front of her, very intimidating, in front of the teacher, very intimidating, but in front of all the other men, extremely intimidating. So I got a kick out of watching this because it was like I was on the edge of my seat, right? Trying to see how this was going to play out. But one thing that was really fascinating, one thing that myself as a viewer learned, and of course the men in the program learned, is that women could sense when a man was coming up to them. First of all, women know exactly why you're coming up to them if you're a guy and you're watching this. So there's no pretending. I mean, you can sort of pretend a little bit, but at the end of the day, if you go up to a woman, she knows exactly why you're coming up, right? That's rule number one. So you might as well just own it on some level, is the teaching that Brian is teaching. The other thing is that if you're in your head, generally when Brian would turn and he would say to the model, he would say, well, how was that for you? What would you have done in the real life situation? And a lot of times when a man is nervous and in his head, she would have said, oh, it was uncomfortable. I just wanted to get out of the social interaction. I just wanted to get out of there and leave, right? It wasn't attractive. I didn't want to continue it. It was awkward. It made me feel nervous. I just wanted to get out. And one of the techniques that Brian teaches the guys is to bring your breath and your awareness into your stomach, into your lower body. This is something that we have a lot with meditation practices all over the world too, Buddhism and what have you. So when he would instruct the men to sort of bring the awareness, bring the awareness down into the body and be grounded in the body, they would come up, and it really didn't even matter so much what the guy would say. When Brian would ask the model, okay, how was that for you? The model would generally say, that was much better. I felt like he was present with me. I felt like it didn't even matter what he said, but I could feel he was coming from a grounded place, and it made me feel good. And I liked it, and I wanted to keep going. It was enjoyable. So I'm saying all of this to just give you some concept of Venus in the sign of Virgo. When you have Venusian things in a place that is too mental, there is a natural sort of awkwardness to it. That's kind of what we're dealing with Venus in Virgo. Not to say that intellectual things cannot be sexy. You have the sapiosexual. Is that what it's called? You have the sapiosexual, I think is what it's called, when people are attracted to like people that are intelligent. So you can definitely have some intellectually attractive situations, but that is really kind of what it is. When Venus is in Virgo, it's like we might find intellectual things attractive. We might be attracted to people that are smart. It just isn't a very passionate kind of in your body passion that you would normally get with, say, Venus in her exaltation sign of Pisces, right? Now, the second part to this equation that is really kind of cool is that Venus is moving under the beams of the sun. So whenever a planet gets within that 15-degree range of the sun, any planet, Venus, Mars, Mercury, whenever that happens, the sun's light will overtake the light of the planet. So whatever light that the planet has, like if you were to go outside at night and you can see, oh, there's Mars, it's red, and there's Saturn, it's kind of yellowish brown, and there's Venus, very, very bright. Venus is the third brightest object in the sky. First you have the sun, obviously, then you have the moon, then you have Venus, then you start to have stars. But Venus is very, very bright. Right now, she is moving too closely to the sun, where if you try to see her, you can't. So the ancient people noticed that there was this range that started to get to be too close to the sun, where all of a sudden they could go out and they could see the star every night, and then all of a sudden they couldn't. It just it was too close to the light. There was too much light in the sky at that time, and you can no longer see this planet. So that symbolically represented that Venus, or any planet going into that situation, was beginning to go through a death and rebirth moment, a symbolic version of going through losing your light. It's almost like you lose your vitality. So Venus is also losing vitality. She is getting overheated, burnt up. She's in a rational place, which she doesn't naturally like to be in. And she is preparing for the underworld, because as she gets closer and closer to the sun, she gets weaker and weaker. Eventually, she'll move on to the heart of the sun and have this Cazimi moment, which is symbolic of a rebirth of Venus. And then she will start to move away from the sun. That is when she is reborn. So this is like a crucifixion, or like a resurrection, but it's like Venus is going through getting nailed to the cross right now, and it's not fun. As you can tell, Venus is really lighting up the birth chart right now. Now, one thing that's going to happen is that if we go forward by days here, I'll just show you this cycle. So this is really cool. So I'm going to go by days pretty quickly, but just watch Venus. Actually, let's take out all the other planets, just so it's just really easy. All we're going to do is keep the sun and Venus in here. Okay, so now I've got all the planets removed except for Venus and the sun, and I want to show you guys something. Watch as I just progress this by one day at a time. You can see Venus is really chasing the sun all the way through Virgo. Then about September the 23rd, the sun moves into the sign of Libra. This is a place where the sun was said to be depressed or fallen. So the sun is really, up to this moment, treating Venus sort of badly, right? He's like a malefic, or he is maltreating Venus. So Venusian things are sort of being maltreated by solar things up until this point. And this symbolism sort of says by September the 23rd, those solar things lose quite a bit of power or harshness because they're falling down right now. So Venus starts to get a little bit of, even though she's under the beams, she's in a bad place, she's going through difficulty, something improves by the 23rd. And then if we progress this forward, you can see that eventually Venus by the 29th moves into one of her temples, the temple of Libra. And in ancient astrology, whenever a planet was being maltreated by the sun, if that happened in its own temple, it was said to have protection against that. So it's as if Venus gets to put on sunscreen right now, or like have a shade umbrella. It's like she was being, kind of cooked out by the sun, and there was too much harshness and she was getting fried. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, she's got shade now. So there's a lot of improvement now with Venusian things by the 29th. Oftentimes when you're into astrology, you can go through these moments where you see something bad happening in the chart and you get this like astrological anxiety. You're sort of like, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. I'm going to lose my relationship. I'm going to break up with my friend. I'm going to have a fight with this person, lose my job, whatever it is. Venusian things go through difficult times because they're sort of in a place that's antithetical to their natural tension. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose everything. It just means that it won't seem natural. It'll be awkward. Maybe it's struggling a bit, right? It's struggling to kind of be who it really is. But by the 29th, Venus gets to be Venus again. And even though she's technically still under the beams, it's like she has a lot more dignity to be herself at this point. If we keep going, pretty much Venus is chasing the sun all the way through her temple of Libra. And this is spectacular timing coming up right on October the 23rd. Look at this. We've got Venus and the sun now move into Scorpio right as the Cazimi moment happens, right as Venus is on the heart of the sun. So this is the moment where she is reborn. And from this moment forward, she moves to escape the beams of the sun. Wow, what a story for Venus. So that is what I've got today, the ingression of Venus into Virgo and some of the other planetary energies that are happening this week. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments in the comment section below so we can all share how these archetypal energies are showing up for us in the world. I'd love to hear your comments, and I'll be back real soon for a couple more videos this week. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye.